Hello, this is David, and welcome to today's live stream. We are going to review today our sixth lesson in sentence combining, subordinate conjunctions and subordinate phrases. Let's get started. What is subordination? A good way to define it is to compare it with something that we've already studied, which is coordination. Let's take a look at these kernel sentences. Some species of whales are nearing extinction. Sentence. Many countries refuse to accept even a partial ban on whaling. Sentence. Now, with coordination, we take those two sentences and treat them as equal thoughts, separated only by a coordinating conjunction. Some species of whale nearing extinction, but many countries refuse to accept. You see how that coordinated conjunction provides equal status to each of those main clauses. However, we might not always want to give equal status to both main clauses. We might, in our writing, find that one is more important to emphasize to our readers than the other. And so we would use subordination. In other words, it places it below the importance of the other one. Adjust my camera here. So with subordination, we would have something like, although, that's a subordinate conjunction that produces a subordinate clause. Although some species of whales are nearing extinction, many countries refuse to accept even a partial ban on whaling. Notice that because that first clause is made subordinate, in other words, a non-sentence, with the conjunction although, and because the information in the main clause is placed last, we now have full emphasis on the fact that there are countries refusing to accept even partial bans on whaling. Now, we can also reverse the emphasis to place the emphasis on the fact that some whales species are becoming extinct. Because many countries refuse to accept even a partial ban on whaling, now comes the main clause that receives more emphasis, put at the end of the sentence, therefore giving it more emphasis. Some species of whales are nearing extinction. Excuse the comma there. So, subordination gives us the ability to emphasize one idea over the other by making it into a subordinate clause, less important, and also allowing us to put it elsewhere in the entire construction. So let's take a look now at some of those coordinators that help us produce subordinate clauses. I'm going to present 27 of them here. These are like the basic ones. There are more subordinate conjunctions than these. But these are the basic ones, and you can make more subordinate conjunctions out of these by adding words. For example, under cause, you have the three subordinate conjunctions because, since, and as. Well, we could take the adverb just and go just as, or just because, or just since. And you see how we're fabricating even more conjunctions, subordinate conjunctions, by adding words to them. But let's take these 27 here and let's apply them according to the case that is needed. Contrast, cause, time, place, condition, negative condition, alternative condition, and degree. Let's look at our kernels first. Mongol invaders threatened to conquer all of Europe. Then Genghis Khan's death forced them to return to Asia. Now, which of those do you wish to emphasize? It's up to you. That's why you have options. That's why this entire series is called the Writer's Options. For example, here's an option. We can place the Genghis Khan's death in the last part of the sentence, giving it more emphasis. and making it a main clause, giving it even more emphasis. With the conjunction, just as the Mongol invaders threatened to conquer all of Europe, and that is subordinate to Genghis Khan's death forced them to return. So you can imagine an essay or a paragraph that emphasized why the Mongol forces, which had conquered most of the known world, stopped at the conquest of Europe. It stopped because of Genghis Khan's death. Now, what if we wanted to emphasize something else in a different essay? The Mongol invaders threatened to conquer all of Europe. That's the main clause, until Genghis Khan's death forced them to return to Asia. So that main clause is the focus of our attention, the fact that they threatened to conquer all of Europe. Now, because the subordinate clause, until Genghis Khan's death force, because that's placed at the end, that also receives emphasis. So we have a pretty equally balanced sentence here. Let's look at this option. Here we have, as you can see, three options for expressing cause. We could say, because Michelangelo's Pietà was damaged by a madman, museum officials displayed it. So we have three ways of illustrating cause-effect here. Options. That's what it's all about, giving you options so that you have a better chance of clarifying and expressing what it is you really want to say and making other things subordinate or less to it. Let's take a look now at how positioning subordinate clauses helps us in this mission to emphasize what we want to emphasize, and only that, so that we can keep the reader's focus on what is important for us to keep the reader's focus on. And by keeping the reader's focus with your ability to manipulate that focus, that puts you more in control of your writing. And by being more in control of your writing will come across more in a more authoritative way. And that's one of the things you're striving for, of course. Okay, as you can guess, we can position clauses, subordinate clauses, anywhere we wish in a sentence. At the beginning, if local residents are willing to put up with them, nuclear plants can provide cheap energy. Now, there, because one thing is put in a subordinate clause at the beginning of the sentence where ideas receive less emphasis, and the value of nuclear power plants is placed in the second clause at the end, what gets emphasized? Nuclear plants sound like a really good deal. But what happens when we reverse their placement? Nuclear power plants can provide cheap energy and enrich an area's economy if local residents are willing to put up with them. So now we've got the big if placed at the end, which now casts doubt upon all the great things that nuclear energy promises. And we can make that if even more dramatic with a dash, which requires a half-second pause as opposed to the comma's quarter-second pause. Nuclear power plants can provide cheap energy and enrich an area's economy if local residents are willing to put up with them. So that's a really big if set off by that dash. And it serves to, unlike the first sentence, which emphasizes the glories of nuclear power plants, this brings it really into doubt. It makes you think twice. Now, we can also place the subordinate clauses in the middle. You get kind of a neither nor situation here. Nuclear power plants, if local residents are willing to put up with them, can provide cheap energy. There, the emphasis is really not on the main clause, the main thought, nor on the if. They're all kind of blended together. But I just wanted to show you that option in case you want to write something with a more neutral tone to it. So that is positioning subordinate clauses. Another important aspect of subordinate clauses is the ability to simplify them. Subordinate clauses, if you use a lot of them, can seem kind of wordy unless you bring them down to their most simplified form. And let me show you how to do that. Here's a subordinate clause. Although they were common 100 years ago, there's your subordinate clause. It is attached to this main clause. Red wolves no longer populate our woods in significant numbers. So you notice how the they, the pronoun, and the weak be verb are probably not necessary. We can probably trim down that subordinate clause simply by getting rid of the pronoun and the weak be verb. So whenever you see weak be verbs in your subordinate clauses, think about simplifying them, cutting them down to write something like, although common 100 years ago, red wolves no longer populate our woods in significant numbers. Several things are happening there. In that subordinate clause, although common 100 years ago, now it's reduced to a phrase, by the way. In that subordinate phrase, we don't have a subject. We don't know what was common 100 years ago. That can work in your favor as a writer because it anticipates anticipation. It makes your reader do what is called cataphoric reference. Cataphoric reference is when you force the reader's mind to jump ahead. And by forcing them to jump ahead, you're creating more coherence in your sentence. So, although common 100 years ago, red wolves no longer populate our woods. And that's a good, tight sentence that places the emphasis on red wolves. Now, let's look at another example. When you are traveling in Scotland, you should visit. You notice right away it's a pronoun. It's followed by a be verb, so you can probably delete it. Let's see. When traveling in Scotland, you should visit the city of St. Andrews. You see how that puts the emphasis not on the you doing the traveling, but on what you should do when you're in Scotland. You should visit the city of St. Andrews. So we get rid of the repetition, and in get rid of the repetition, we also tighten the focus on the thing that we want to focus on, what you should do in Scotland. Now, let's do a little bit of practice with the subordinate clauses. Let's see who we have here in the chat so far. Ari, hello. And, great, Ari. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Ari says, great information. I appreciate that. Rama Mohammed, hello, Rama. Infected Chris. And much more exciting. Indeed it is, Chris. Indeed it is. Now, what I would like to do is to have you guys tell me how you would revise these. Now look at this one. Here are two kernel sentences. Giant Amazon water lilies range up to 7 feet across. Fact. Giant Amazon water lilies are large enough to provide living space for insects, birds, and lizards. So you look over to the list on the left and you find one that will help you say what you want to say. Where do you want to place the emphasis? Do you want to place the emphasis on the largeness of giant water lilies? Or do you want to place the emphasis on the fact that insects, birds, and lizards actually live inside of these plants? Let's see what we got here. Here we have the cause. Because giant water lilies range up to 7 feet across, they are large enough to provide. Now, can we reduce that? Can we reduce the number of words? We could probably go with a pronoun first because they range up to 7 feet across. And if we can go because they range up 7 feet across and delay that subject, it puts the more emphasis on the giant water lilies being large enough. But there are other ways of reducing it. And here's one of the beauties of us now being on the 6th lesson in this sentence combining. You now have a range of options. Here we go back to the second or first lesson that we did. Participles. Ranging up to 7 feet across giant water lilies are large enough. See how we can now really reduce it down and use its positioning, last part of the sentence, to gain emphasis. We have other options. And here we have a adjective phrase, kind of like an absolute almost, large enough to provide living space for insects, birds, and lizards. Giant water lilies range up to 7 feet across. So one of the sentences puts the emphasis on the fact that they're hosts to a variety of animals. The second sentence puts the emphasis on their 7-foot girth. And you're able to do either because you now have options for how to combine parts of a sentence together. And that's the big takeaway from this. You now have options. Let's do another one. Most Americans use microwaves to make popcorn. The Iroquois Indians use heated sand to pop theirs. What do you want to emphasize? The fact that Americans use microwaves or the fact that Iroquois Indians used to use heated sand? Okay, either one, huh? Although most Americans use microwaves to make popcorn, boom, now comes the emphasis, Iroquois Indian. Now, why is it emphasized? It's emphasized for two reasons. One, the first clause is made subordinate with the subordinated conjunction, although. And the second clause is a main clause, the finite verb, and it is placed at the end of the sentence. So the fact that it is a main clause and the fact that it is placed at the end of the sentence gives the max emphasis to the fact we wish to convey about Iroquois Indians. We can do just the opposite, of course. Although Iroquois Indians use heated sand to make popcorn, most Americans use microwave. And there you can see how that would work when you're talking about the Americans' overuse of microwaves or how microwaves have revolutionized cooking. All of these sentences are correct. They just achieve different emphasis, and you can use that emphasis to emphasize what you want to in your writing. Here's another one. Most Americans use microwaves to make popcorn. It's a main clause. It's placed at the beginning, but then we have a subordinate clause, although the Iroquois Indians use heated sand to pop theirs. I don't know where it could fit, but it's a possibility. It is another option. Okay, we'll do a few more. This is an interesting one. Ben Nighthorse Campbell won the election to the U.S. Senate in 1992. He became the first Native American to be elected a senator. Now, what do you want to emphasize? Ben Campbell, are you writing a biography? And so you want to emphasize Ben Campbell? Or are you writing a history of the Senate in which you are noting the first a Native American to become a senator? The first African American was, of course, during the Reconstruction period. Okay, here we have what? Here we have emphasis on the biography of Ben Campbell. When he won election in 1992, that's kind of tossed aside. It's in a subordinate clause. It's at the beginning. And now this is in the main clause at the end, so it receives more emphasis. Ben Nighthorse Campbell became the first Native American U.S. Senator. Now we have, sorry, these are out of order. Now we have just the opposite. When Ben Nighthorse Campbell won election, he became the first Native American U.S. Senator. There it achieves more emphasis on the fact of the first U.S. Senator came into being in 1992. And I don't know what all this other stuff is going on. I'm sorry about that. What do we have now? Kind of the same thing, but what we've done is shortened the subordinate clause. We've made the subordinate clause less wordy with the word becoming. Again, we've used our participle. Ben Nighthorse Campbell won election, becoming the first U.S. Senator. And we can do this as the final option, where we put Ben Nighthorse as the main clause and put the subordinate clause at the end. All of those are correct. All of those can be used depending upon where you want the emphasis. What your takeaway is, things that are in the main clause will receive more emphasis, and things that are at the end of the sentence will receive more emphasis. You can use those separately to achieve a kind of equal balance, or you can use them all for one thing to give them maximum emphasis. Oh, Elvis. For those of you from outside this culture and don't know Elvis Presley, he was a big figure in the 1950s, and he changed American music, ushered in rock and roll. And now we can either emphasize the achievement of Elvis, we should put that in quote marks, the achievement of Elvis, or we can, if we're writing a history of music in America, or history of rock and roll, we can emphasize when it happened. We could say Elvis changed American music. Full emphasis there, when he successfully blended R&B, rock, and country western. We can also say when Elvis successfully blended R&B, rock, and country western, he changed American music. What receives the most emphasis? We got a double dong there, double ding. He changed American music is at the end, and he changed American music is a main clause. If you wanted to give it even more emphasis, you could replace the first Elvis with he and save the real Elvis until the end. When he successfully blended R&B, rock, and country western, Elvis changed American music. And there, that would be perfect for a biography of Elvis. Sorry, I should have brought that sentence in a little bit earlier, huh? Okay, so now you see what we're talking about when it comes to subordinate clauses. As always, here is your homework. It can be found at that link. I will go ahead and paste that link in the chat window if you want to copy and paste it and hold on to it. So let's get over here, and here is the link to homework. Okay, Mr. Smile. Hi, Mr. Smile. Mr. Smile's question is, insofar as, sure, absolutely. Insofar as is a subordinate conjunction that shows degree. Let me duplicate this slide. Take this out of here. I'll bring this over as my text box. And I would go something like, insofar as the judge allowed, the inmate was given the ability to serve a sentence at home. It's not really a good one, is it? We need to make that bigger too. Let's see, let's find another one here. Insofar as the same as to the extent that, that's insofar as the students complied with the instructions, their grades reflected a lack of attention. And you could do the same thing with to the extent that, because they both mean the same thing. Let's try that. To the extent that students complied with the instructions, their grades reflected a lack of attention. Or yeah, I guess more realistically, you say the grades reflected or the grades varied accordingly. It shows degree. Ada says, looking at the list of subordinators, which ones can and can't be used in academic writing? They can all be used in academic writing, Ada. They can all be used. Some are a bit more informal than others. For example, the adverb just is a bit on the informal side, but I specifically chose all of them so that they could be used in your academic writing. Yeah, Anna, yeah, another definition of, and thank you for that, another definition of in so much as is indeed um, what you're saying there. It depends on or what aspect. I misspelled extent there. Extant means currently existing or available. Extant data analysis would be an analysis of data that is currently held. Extant. Good word for you guys to know. Okay, great. That is lesson number 6. We have 2 more lessons to go. Lesson 7, uh, prepositional phrases and infinitive phrases, and lesson 8, noun substitutes. And after that, you guys will have a lot of options. I've been getting some great homework, and I appreciate that very much. And the homework has been looking very good. And it seems like that the sentence combining is definitely making a difference for you. Okay, well, we are now in the Q&A portion of our live chat. Excuse me. Sorry, sorry I missed last week. I was giving a presentation at Jack Welch Management Institute of Strayer University. And they wanted it at 12 o'clock. Okay, so what are your questions? Who do we have here? If I've missed any questions. Errol, Ari, excuse me. Rama Muhammad, Infected Chris, Mr. Smile. Mr. Smile, I don't think I know you. Where are you from? What are you studying? I think I know the rest of them, the attendees. Okay, so we're ready for your questions. I know there's a bit of a lag there, so let's go ahead and get those in. Mr. Smile, were those examples good enough? How's it going? Tell me what you guys have been working on. I've been working on a video on academic integrity, which I hope to have done in a few days. I don't think any of you have any problems with academic integrity. I cover the importance and the techniques of paraphrasing and quoting, especially the use of signal phrases when quoting. So I'm waiting on your questions. Hello, handsome. Okay. I'm assuming you're being serious there. I'm not sure. Um, by the way, could I get you to sign an affidavit to that effect? Because there are not very many people who would believe that. Okay, Infected Chris. I remember lots of questions on Okay, good. Well, then this video will help you on paraphrasing and citations. Let me just address a few of those keys, Infected Chris, and the rest of you. The biggest error that I find when it comes to paraphrasing is that you think that a paraphrase has to be, quote, entirely in your own words. And that simply is not the case. It is impossible. I repeat, it is impossible to put an author's a section, a passage that you're paraphrasing entirely into your own words. You must repeat articles, an and the. You must repeat prepositions of, to, from, by. You must repeat key words. There is no doubt about that. Paraphrasing means just that. The phrasing is different. Not all the words are different. The phrasing is different. Let me pull up an example for you. I'll pull it up from the script for this video. Let me share my screen and I'll show you an example of this. Okay, you should be seeing a Word document now. Let me make this Word document large and you'll see what I mean. Okay, up at the top, you see an original passage. This is from an author named Graham. Here's the original. Notice that it is in quote marks. Breast cancer is the type of cancer most closely linked with, when I want you to listen to every word, most closely linked with women in the public consciousness. But lung cancer has now surpassed it as the leading cause of cancer deaths among women. Now, here is a paraphrase of it. The public has been led to believe that breast cancer is the number one cancer killer of women, yet lung cancer now takes the top spot by a wide margin. That is a good paraphrase of the original. But notice the words that are repeated. I repeated the word public. These are key words. I repeated the phrase breast cancer. I repeated cancer several times. I repeated lung cancer. Those are all words that I repeated, not to mention prepositions like the and of. So that is the biggest problem that I find, is that you think you have to try to put everything in your own words, when in actuality, you need and must repeat certain keywords. Okay, Chris, what's the lesson for next week? Well, it's whatever you want it to be. I had planned for it to be lesson number 7 in sentence combining. But if you want me to do something else, Chris, just tell me what it is, and I'm happy to meet your needs. Here's Quintin 100. Doc, I have no questions on that topic. I want to tell you that I really appreciate your comments and devotion. Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Quentin. Where are you from, Quentin, and what are you studying? Infected Chris. What's the email for the homework? I seem to, okay, sure. You can send it to promopeakdavid@gmail.com. There it is. You should see it in the chat now. I will put it up. There it is right there. If that one doesn't work, Tom Taylor, this one works. Okay. Oh, infected. Oh, you were just curious. Okay. But by all means, this is not just to Infected Chris, but to anyone. If you have pressing issues that you need for me to cover, please just let me know. Oh, here's Quentin. Quentin, you're getting your PhD in Ed Psych. You're from Bulgaria. Oh, great. And you wrote to me on Facebook the other day. Oh, okay. Yes, I think you used the Cyrillic alphabet. Is that correct? Your name on Facebook is in the Cyrillic alphabet. Do I have the right person? Bulgaria. I've always wanted to visit Bulgaria. I actually had a job opportunity in Sofia, Bulgaria one time. And to this day, I regret not taking a transfer from Savannah, Georgia to Sofia, Bulgaria. What an incredibly beautiful town. So historic, one of the oldest cities in Europe. Yeah, I really do regret not doing that. So, PhD. However, I can help Quentin. Oh, the source book. Yeah. Yeah. Quentin asked the question about, and I can pull that up if you want me to. How do you cite a chapter in an anthology? Sometimes it's called an anthology. Sometimes it's called a source book. Sometimes it's called a collection. But the answer is you cite the authors of the chapter first. And then after that, you put edit ED or EDS if it's multiple editors, ED, and then you put the editors' names. Yes, I know. I should. I'm kicking myself still today. I work full time for the University of Maryland, University College, and they were opening a branch campus in Sofia, Bulgaria, and they offered me the opportunity to go direct the branch campus. My son was young at the time, so I didn't feel like I could leave. Well, next lifetime. Yeah, Quentin, you might want to look on my YouTube channel in the live video section. I've been doing these live streams now for several months. I forget how long. And I've covered a lot of topics that are pertinent to getting your master's or your PhD, especially as it relates to research. Okay, so other questions, please. Infected Chris, that's a huge commitment. Yeah, it was. Yeah, right. Yeah, definitely was not. Yeah, my son was very young at the time, and we didn't know about medical care in Bulgaria, so my wife was against it. That's why I didn't go. And she is in charge of childcare, so that takes precedence. Okay. Other questions? What are you guys doing? Quentin, where are you in your PhD? Are you still taking courses? Have you started your research yet? What are you guys working on? What are you doing? Quentin, Is it too late for moving now? No, sure, why not? I'll go. Perhaps you could still come. I'm currently based in Sofia, but there's actually a more beautiful city, Varna. That's interesting. That's your hometown on the Black Sea. Ah, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Yeah, I might just have to do it, Quentin. I'm 100% online now, so there's no reason why I can't just go there and live and do my online work from there. So where are you? Are you in Bulgaria right now, Quentin? You see, we could actually change places. You could just as well be here in Savannah, Georgia, and I could just as well be in Varna, Bulgaria. Okay, Infected Chris, thank you. A question that we can talk about here. For anybody who wants to get a degree in English, what would the typical fourth year classes consist of? Good question. It depends upon what area that you are majoring in. You could be majoring in literature, and if you do that, your final courses are going to be, of course, literature. You could be majoring in American studies or English studies. You could also be majoring in, and this was my major, I majored in rhetoric and composition. And all of my fourth year classes were in theories of rhetoric, how to teach composition, research about composition, etc. By composition, I mean writing, not music composition. So it depends upon what your classes are. You could also be majoring in English as a foreign language or English as a second language. And there are colleges and universities that offer that degree as well. And so you could graduate with the ability to teach English as a second language, English as an additional language. And in that case, your fourth year classes would be very intensive English grammar, vocabulary, all those kinds of things. Quentin, I am, yes. Ha ha ha, I've always wanted to come to America. The American dream. And of course, my favorite guitarist, Yngwie Malmsteen. I don't know him or her. I will have to look them up. The American dream, Quentin. We do enjoy more freedoms in America than a lot of other countries. The current right-wing extremism in America is doing its best to take away those freedoms. So I'm not sure now is a particularly great time to come to America if you are concerned politically about things. If you're coming here to study, of course, there are great schools here. And yeah, great schools. And what is your major? Ed psych? Great ed psych programs in major universities. I don't know the university you're studying at, but I guess you would have to weigh the relative value of a ed psych degree from an American university as opposed to an ed psych degree from a Bulgarian university or another European university. Affected Chris, thank you. It's a little bit different. You're criminal justice, but writing anything is my favorite part. That's interesting. So you are an undergraduate, Infected Chris, is that correct? And if you are an undergraduate, how far along are you in your degree? If writing is your favorite thing to do, I don't think you want to be in criminal justice. From what I understand, and I've been teaching on the college level for 30 years. From what I understand, those who major in criminal justice, the only writing they do is to fill out report after report after report after report. And a lot of their time is spent, of course, working one-on-one, whether in a police department or in a penal institution, as a parole officer. I guess if you're an investigator, that would be more interesting if you're into that. And investigators, I think, have all the fun, so to speak. But if your love is truly writing, then I would then ask you to break it down. Are you in love with creative writing? Is that something you want to do for a living? Or are you more into academic typewriting? Quintin, I know nothing is as shiny as it looks. Yeah. To be honest, Bulgaria doesn't shine with its politics as well. I'm in the biggest and oldest Bulgarian university. Sophia. Oh, cool. Well, hard to go wrong there, Quintin. Hard to go wrong. Uh, I would say go ahead and finish up there because transferring is always a huge, huge loss. Whenever you transfer while you're in the middle of a degree, you're going to lose a lot of credits. You're going to lose a lot of time and thus money. So I don't know how close you are, but usually staying where you are and finishing up is your best bet. And then if you do real well, and I bet you will, then you can pursue postgraduate studies in the US. And postgraduate studies, once you have your PhD, postgraduate studies are relatively easy to get into. I mean, you could get into some of America's most prestigious schools, on the postgraduate level. Yeah, it's much less competitive there. We're talking Harvard, Yale, Princeton, University of Michigan, Berkeley, etc. I think the best ed psych program in America is at Harvard. Vanderbilt in Tennessee is also very good. Oh, so Infected Chris, you have just over a year to go. Yeah. Oh, changing majors now, Infected Chris, might be an issue for you. What are your career plans, Infected Chris, after you receive that CJ degree? Are there any questions about research and writing? I'm great to advise you on all your career plans, but here's Quintin. Here's Infected Chris. I love creative writing, but I've certainly done. I have an idea for you, Infected Chris. Some of the most popular novelists and journalists in America today are those who have a really strong criminal justice background and have worked in the criminal justice system. They've accumulated a lot of stories, a lot of detail, a lot of authority, a lot of knowledge, and they have some of the most popular novels out there. They're generally called procedural novels. But yeah, you could spend some time in criminal justice, get a lot of that knowledge and experience behind you, and then translate it into creative writing. A lot of people have done that. Here's Quintin. You're in your last year. You got to stay. Unfortunately, you're way behind. Why are you way behind? Still have to write the theoretical part, and I got data for my SPSS analysis. I gathered it using a Google form. Okay. So are you trying to settle on a research methodology? Are you trying to come up with a theoretical framework, Quintin? They're relatively easy to do. I'm wondering what the holdup is. It almost sounds like you have not been getting enough feedback or enough give and take from your thesis advisor. I mean, the theoretical part should be the easiest part because it's all already written. Oh, no, I'm not sorry at all. No, I did not mean it in that way, Infected Chris. I want to talk about anything you want to talk about, but I'm just worried that there are questions about research that we haven't talked about yet. That's all. Believe me, that's fine. Yeah, Quintin, if you've already got your data and you're about to run your stat pack, the SPSS, man, man, you really need to have a theoretical framework. Have you written a proposal yet? Quentin, have you written a proposal? A research proposal? It almost seems like you've done the last part first, which is collect the data, and you're almost ready to do your raw data. You definitely should not do an analysis of your data until you have your theoretical framework. It's your theoretical framework that drives the analysis, Quentin. You really do need to have that theoretical framework nailed down. Yeah, that's my question exactly. Here's the question, Quentin, that Infected Chris is asking. I'm going to Google here theoretical framework for educational psychology. Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, you guys should be seeing my screen. I'll enlarge it. So, Quentin, I went to Google, typed in theoretical framework, educational psychology examples, and I would get on it. Here's theoretical framework, educational leadership, examples and theories. What are the theories of educational psychology? Here we go. Have you heard of any of these? Are you going to be using behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, experientialism, experientialism, or social contextual learning theories? I don't know if those apply to research or not. Those are learning theories, aren't they? Yeah. That's not helping us. So far, all I've got is learning theories. We'll type in dissertation. That should do it. Here we go. Type in theoretical framework, educational psychology dissertation, and you will see what other people in your position have used. Here you go. Here's one. Understanding, selecting, and integrating a theoretical framework in dissertation research, creating the blueprint for your house. Let's see what this baby looks like. Okay, here we go. This is one you need. Quentin, you need this article. Here are some of the theories: transformational relational, transactional management, servant leadership, moral trait, situational. Wow, there are a lot of theories. Which one are you going to choose? Or which ones are you going to choose? Because you have to have a theoretical framework before you do your analysis. No doubt about it. You need that article. Okay. All right, here's Quintin. Let's stop sharing the screen. Quintin, my topic includes burnout, autonomy, and self-efficacy and collective efficacy. So I have to write a chapter on each. What's the overarching concept? What is your research question, Quintin? Do you have a research question? Let me ask you this. Have you written a research proposal yet? I bet you do find it frustrating. You know why you find it frustrating? You have not yet written a research proposal, it sounds like, and you do not yet have a theory by which you are going to analyze the literature that you read and the data that you have collected. Correlation, yeah. That should be easy to find with the SPSS. That's going to be easy. That's the easy part. So pretty much I know what I'm supposed to do. Procrastinating, stressing over it. No, that's not really thinking with me. Understandable. What do you mean understandably? Why did you put the word understandably there? Oh, so, okay, Quintin, please answer this question for me. Have you written a research proposal? If so, what is your research question? Whenever you say that you know what you're supposed to do, it sounds to me like you are proceeding without a research question and without a research proposal. Here's Mohammed. Hi, Mohammed. Can you help us out on this? Now, and I'm not trying to be cruel or pointing out or saying naughty, naughty, Quintin. I truly want to know if you have skipped over that step. If you have skipped over that step, that explains why you are currently procrastinating, why you're having trouble doing it. I find correlation with all these using data. I've from 600 teachers. That's great. Sounds like that's a very large sample. That sounds great. We still don't know how we're going to, what theory we're going to use to interpret them. That's all I got. Okay. Quintin, here's a yes or no question. Yes or no. Have you written a research proposal? Yes or no. Do you have a research question? Yes or no. And don't be afraid to say no. We can take care of that easily. I think we've discovered the problem, Quintin. Of course you're frustrated. Of course you're having trouble beginning because you don't have an overall vision. You don't have an overall goal. This stuff is being thrown at you kind of in a piecemeal fashion. So I take it that you have not done a literature review and that you don't have a guiding research question or research questions. And it's okay. I mean, it's not your fault that you weren't guided to do this step by step. That's not your fault. So I think a lot of the pre-steps that should be in place before you actually begin writing your chapters have not yet taken place. Therefore, it is quite understandable that you are experiencing some hesitancy, trepidation, and blockage before trying to write those chapters. You're simply not ready to write them. As I explained in the last live chat that we had, the leading cause of writer's block is not laziness. It's not a deficiency of moral character. It's not a deficiency of knowledge. The primary cause of writer's block is not being ready to write. You have not done all the things that lead up to beginning to write. Oh, Infected Chris has a great insight here. It's like baking a cake. You have the ingredients, but not a recipe. Whoo, that is outstanding. Very good. Infected Chris, I owe you part of my pay today. I'm not getting paid, so you get nothing. Here's Mohammed Munib doing research on corporate governance, and CSR. I found literature syntheses is a difficult part for you. Yeah, I agree. How far along are you on your literature? And you just go ahead and get on through it. Another thing I would ask you, Mohammed, are you doing a directed literature review? Are you doing an analytical literature review? Or are you simply doing a general overview? That can be a real dividing point. Here's Joshua. Hi, Joshua. I'm coming into this a tad bit out of context, but I reckon that a conversational internalization of the information. Yeah, I agree with you, Joshua. Will oil the wheels on vision casting. I agree with you totally, Joshua. That there needs to happen a conversation on how all of this is put together, on what is the final goal we're working toward. As you put it, Joshua, what is the vision? And Joshua is a fine arts major in Ireland, but what he's saying here applies just as well to studying educational psychology in Bulgaria. You have to have the vision in order to reach the end. You have to know where you're going in order to get there. Quintin, I have done a lit review. I've read a good chunk of the literature on the topic. My hypothesis, I think you meant my hypotheses. My hypotheses are just too simple, I guess. Let's hear your hypotheses. That's not a bad hypothesis. Burnout will correlate positively with autonomy. That's not a bad hypothesis at all. And now you're collecting the data, and you're going to analyze the data to determine whether or not there's that positive correlation. That's not a bad hypothesis at all. I think that I would like to hear more preliminary stuff before I even get to the hypothesis. You do have more than one hypothesis, right? If you do, then I think you also see the need of finding some kind of rubric, some kind of way of putting them all together, a kind of overarching question that subsumes or acts as an umbrella term for your hypotheses. And I'm assuming you have 3 of them. Well, it's a little bit after 1. This has been very interesting. Quintin, thank you very much for coming forward and sharing all this with us. I think everybody is kind of saying the same thing to you. Let's go back and let's write a research proposal that contains a strong section on research methodology. You've done the data collection. You don't need to write that part. But the theoretical framework, I think, is missing. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to let you guys go if there aren't any other questions. Oh, you're not the Irish guy. I'm sorry, Joshua. You're an American living in Illinois. There's an Irish guy who comes sometimes, and he plays the guitar, and he's writing music for the guitar as his graduate degree at Dublin University in Ireland. That's why I confused them. But thank you for clearing that up, Joshua. I hope to see you again, Joshua. Okay, see you guys later. I need to go ahead and end this before I run out of bandwidth. Okay, you're welcome, Infected Chris.